Hey everybody, Troy here and welcome to video 11 of our PowerShell Fundamentals series. In this video, I'm going to introduce you to the concept of PowerShell variables. I've got two particular goals with this video. First, I want to show you how simple it is to build variables in PowerShell. I'm going to show you a very introductory glimpse at how these things come together, how they work, and what we can do with them. The second goal is to show you how you can integrate these with basic PowerShell scripts. Scripting is, after all, why we're learning PowerShell. And we want to be able to create scripts that automate and change and make our lives as network administrators or sysadmins easier. And variables are a huge component of that. The way I'm going to do this is, first off, simply show you how to create some simple variables. It's super simple. I'm going to show you some of the very basic rules and get us rolling with this. I will follow up with a more detailed video on variables, because as soon as we start playing, we're going to see that we can start adding depth and dimension. I'm going to follow that up with a second video on that. Along the way, though, you're going to very quickly see that we have to understand the difference between single quotes, double quotes, and these special things called escape characters as they apply to PowerShell. And we will see that right out of the gate with this. I'm going to also show you how we can connect variables to a command called read host. This will allow your users to interact with you and actually enter content to a variable using this command. So you're going to be able to create variables that accept user input, which then could make your scripts more dynamic. And then finally, I'm going to show you how we can place these variables in PowerShell scripts, and we will take our PowerShell skills to a completely another level here. Awesome. Let's open this up. I'm going to start with my ISE, and I've tucked my scripting pane away here just for a moment. So here's what I want to do. Let's just play with some variables. Let's build a variable. Well, it is this simple, everybody. I'm going to go $A equals 4. Done. Now, what I've done here is I have created a box, and that box is called A. That box is my variable. The contents of that variable is 4. It's an integer. And I simply created, I went with a $, which told PowerShell that what's coming is the name of a variable. And I connected that with an equal sign and said the contents of that variable will be the integer 4. If I want to see that variable in action, I simply type $A and it returns 4. That's what I built. So just to rehash there, a really important concept is that what I've done is I built a box. Okay, now that box is called A. Now the variable is my box. My variable is called A. Now I also, though, have the contents of A. The contents are denoted by shown by, expressed by the $A. I'm talking about what's in the box. That's called A. That's what I'm talking about here. So a subtle but important concept there. If you're getting that and you're staying with me, we're in great shape. Let's build another one. I'm going to go $B equals, so a variable called B, the contents of which will equal, let's go with a string, hello. Excellent. So I've built a variable called B, and this time, instead of putting an integer in it, I've put a string in it. That string is the word hello. It is as easy to call it again as it was for the first variable I built. It returned that. Notice I use single quotes there. I'm going to use, let's try and see if this works with $C. Let's use double quotes. How about goodbye? Okay, great. Let's see if that works. $C, a variable called C, with the contents of that variable being the word goodbye. And I call it, it returns, that's what it is. That variable will stay as long as my shell is open. Let me show you what I mean by that. Very important. I'm going to close my shell. I'm going to open this up again, and I'm going to go back and recall $A. And it says, yeah, no, I don't remember that. This is a completely different PowerShell session. So A and B, yeah, see, and you wanted to fill that in for me. It's gone. There are no A, B, and C anymore. So the first rule of variables, although they're easy, they only exist as long as my session is open. Now, speaking of easy, what options do I have with respect to naming? Okay, well, what I'm going to do here is create a variable called C. Okay, now you see that I'm just using A, B, and C. Those are easy to use, but they're not going to help me when I get to scripting. Those are going to be very vague and very difficult. A good practice is going to be ensuring that I call a variable something sensible, something like file type, for example, right? And maybe I want that file type to be a certain, like a Windows file doc. Oh, that's going to be a .docx. Okay, X, that's what I'm trying to say. Double quotes there. So now I've got a variable called file type, which I return. It says, yeah, that's a docx file, Troy. Thanks very much. Now you can see that that was a legal file name. I could do the same thing with this, file type. Okay, let me call that. Now, you'll notice that I called the variable that I just created called file type, only this time I used a capital F. I could do the same thing with FILETYPE. Okay, PowerShell, what I'm showing you is that PowerShell is not case sensitive as it pertains to variable names. These are in fact the same variable. PowerShell is considering them all the same thing. So unlike some languages where they would be different variables, this is all the same. So that means case does not matter. That's the second rule we've got. A, we know that they're only in the session. B, they're not case sensitive, which means that I have the flexibility of something like this is camel case. Okay, so there's a variable that's a legal name. I could type it in, this is Pascal case. I could do that as well. Also equally legal name. In fact, I have uppercase, lowercase. So I have my lowercase letters, my uppercase letters, I have numbers, and I have the underscore. All those are my characteristically legal characters here. So I could make so this would be a perfectly legal file name as well, or a variable name as well, file type. Okay, what I cannot do, I cannot use spaces like this. You'll see right out of the gate, PowerShell has assumed that the moment I stopped putting in a legal character in my variable name, I've moved on to something else. It's reading this as variable I, and then it's reading the next thing as some other expression or variable or argument or parameter, and it's going to freak out at me, doesn't know what it is. If I want to use spaces though, I could work around. I can use underscore if I want. That's perfectly legal. That I get away with that. Or I could do something really fancy and add a brace to it. This lets me use spaces in a variable name, and brace equals hello. Awesome. So that's a perfectly legal variable name as well. What that means though is that I'd have to find it in ISE. It's not that bad. I can just tab through it, but it's, to me, not really the best practice of creating a variable name, but it absolutely works if you wanted to. So we've now seen that creating a variable is fairly straightforward. It's the name preceded by the $, followed by an equal sign, followed by something, a string, an integer, or even another command. So I could say services, and I could make that the contents of that variable be a command, something like that, get service. Okay, so let's do that. So what I've done is created a variable now called services, which is the contents. The contents of that box called services is the entire collection of objects that would be retrieved when I type in get service. There it is. Okay, so so now I see that a variable can be one object, or it can be a complete collection of objects if I want to. And I can have arrays inside these variables as well. Now, that's short, sweet, simple. We're kind of getting it. We're going to dive deeper a bit into that in another video. But what I want to show you a little bit, let's go back to this. I'm going to go A equals hello, and B equals hello. Okay, so I've done exactly the same commandlet. However, what I did was the first time I used single quotes. The second time I used double quotes. Now, both work, okay, as I proved earlier. The single quotes and double quotes on the surface doesn't seem to matter. I cannot get away with this. It needs quotes. Okay, because it doesn't recognize that as an integer or something that it could work with. So if I'm going to put a string in, I used to have to use a single quote or double quotes. But what's the difference? Well, the difference is this. I can add variables inside variables. Let's show you what I mean by this. I'm going to go A equals the word hello. Excellent. Now I know that when I hit A, I'm going to return the word hello. Maybe I want the next variable, b, equal to b, a string that says this, $A, comma, my name is Troy. Okay, cool. No problem. Let's see what happens when I type in b. Beautiful. So these double quotes took the value of the variable a, which I know is the word hello, and actually expanded it to include the contents. And so when it returned the variable b, it expressed the contents of variable a. Now, the reason that worked is because I used double quotes here. Double quotes means that I'm going to expand all the variables or characters or anything. I'm going to utilize all the special characters inside PowerShell. The difference is this. Let's try this again. I'm going to rewrite b as a single quote string, and I'm going to go a, my name is Troy, single quotes. Now let's see right out of the gate what happens here. Okay. The difference is single quotes are literal. What it means is that it's PowerShell is looking at everything between those quotes as the literal value. And so I wrote literally $A. It did not expand or execute or act on that special character the same way it did with the double quotes. So you can see the difference in the syntax. The moment I go double quotes, PowerShell is actually by color recognizing that it's going to replace that with the contents of variable a. And if I run b now, you can see it's integrated the word hello. So that becomes fairly important. There's really no rule of thumb here aside from whatever you get used to. My personal rule of thumb is to stick with single quotes as a general rule until I run into something I need to execute, and then I flip to double quotes. But they're completely interchangeable most of the time. It's very important to understand, though, the difference, because I can get in trouble with my double quotes with something like this. Maybe I want the word C, or the variable C, to equal, I have $4 in my wallet. Okay, now different. You see how PowerShell is going to execute this? Okay, it's expecting that there's a variable called 4, and it's going to try to give me the contents of the variable 4 because of the way I have put the double quotes in here. It accepts the command, it accepts the variable, but it could not return the contents of a variable that doesn't exist. So I have two options to fix that. I could go back to my single quotes, like so, and that will work. Cool. Or I could use a special character called an escape character. And what that is, that's a backtick. You're going to find that right up on, if you're using a Microsoft keyboard, it's the right above the tab button, and it's right there. So it's that little accent grave if you're thinking French, but it's the button right above the tab, right below the tilde. So you can see what it looks like. It's just kind of this funny little apostrophe. But the moment I put that in, what I'm telling PowerShell is to not view the character that immediately follows as a special character. So I'm escaping out of that, and when I hit my $C now, I've said don't execute that, and don't treat it as a variable. This time it's not. The escape character also has some other funky things we can do with it. And so what I could do here, like so, is I could actually say this. I could go, I have, let's say, my name. Do this. My name is, and I'm going to use that backtick followed by an N character, which now the escape character is going to be treating this something special. Troy. Let's do that, and let's call the contents of C. There you go. That backtick N told PowerShell that I want you to put this on a new line. And so there's some functionality there that I can build with this. So what you've seen right now, everybody, is that the context of the quotes matter. If I use single quotes, PowerShell will interpret what's in between those as literally what's there. If I use double quotes, it will try to execute upon any special character it finds, such as a $sign or a backtick or something like that. The backtick is special in that it escapes out of the usual functionality and provides either the literal value, as you can see, and I have $4 in my wallet, or it created an additional special connection between backtick n, which actually told PowerShell to create a new line. So there's a lot of functionality here. The point to take away is that play, learn, experiment, and you will eventually get it right, because eventually you're going to come up with a character or a sentence that looks like this, and it's going to be something like this. I don't know how this sentence will work. Okay, you see I put single quotes in. Well, of course, PowerShell assumes that that's the contents of the variable, and then everything beyond that was difficult. But if I wrap this up in double quotes, okay, now I'm happy. So there's just that functionality that will come into play. Excellent. Now, get to the good stuff, Troy. You see, I've seen that I've used variables, and now I can see some of the differences between single quotes, double quotes, and escape characters. But what if I wanted my user to fill in the contents of the variable? Right now, when I go in $C and I type the word crayon, okay, well, I've created the contents of the variable C. I've told PowerShell what I want it to be. But what if there's a situation where I don't know what the contents are going to be? It's going to be up to somebody else, or it's going to change every single time. I don't want to have to edit a script anytime I want to add some variety to this. I want to create an opportunity where myself or another user could actually input something to become the contents of the variable. Well, the trick is this command called read host. And read host looks like this. I can say read host, enter something now. Okay, cool. So PowerShell takes whatever I type there and it presents it on the screen, and it is now waiting for me to interact with it. And I can tell by two things. First off, it's waiting for me, and look at this. PowerShell is actually running. I'm in mid-command right now. This red square means it's in the middle of an execution. And the way I'm going to solve this is I'm going to be typing in the word 7. Excellent, and it presents that back on the screen. Now, that's how read hosts work. I can connect read host with variables. So let's go C, and let's make the contents of C the read host command. And I'm going to type this. I'm going to type, please enter contents. Please enter the contents of variable C. Okay, I use single quotes here. Okay, now read host is going to present that on my screen. It says, I'd like you now to enter the contents of variable C, which I'm going to type as in, I'm going to say 55. Excellent. Enter. Now, if I call variable C, what I did is I should see the contents of variable C equaling whatever my user typed right there. That should be the contents of variable C. Let's test it. There it is. Brilliant. Now I can see that I not only can create my own contents of variable stuff, but I can have somebody else do it for me. Now I've got a whole new level of flexibility to play with. Well, speaking of flexibility, what if I wanted to build this into a script? Okay, well, variables work two ways to help me. First off, they can simplify commands. So for example, maybe I wrote a script. Here's a common one that we've been using before. I'm going to say get service, and I know that there's a service on my computer called Spooler. There it is. It's running right now. Excellent. Maybe I wanted to be able to restart that service. The name Spooler. Okay, and if I execute that commandlet, it will have executed that. And I can catch that by adding the verbose command. It says, yes, I'm performing that operation. Excellent. But maybe I want to turn this into a script, okay, for whatever reason. Maybe I'm going to take something very, very simple, and I'm going to paste this command into a script, and I'm going to call this script, restarts service, the Spooler service. So I just put a comment in there that tells me what this does, and I'm going to call this script restart service. spooler. That's what I want to do. I'm going to call it restart spooler. Excellent. So now I've got a script called restart spooler that restarts the print spooler service. If I save this, I have a simple script. Let's move to my PowerShell. I'm going to go to my, it's on my desktop, my PowerShell practice. Excellent. So it's in there, and it's just, oh, I saved it as untitled. Silly Troy. Let's do a save as. I want to save this as not. I want to go restart spooler. Okay, excellent. So that's my my script right there. Now I can just start typing restart spooler. It's going to restart the spooler. Fantastic. Here's the first way I can use variables. Okay, if I had something more complicated than this, or a very lengthy commandlet, well, I can create a variable called service. Okay, and I can call it, let's make it spooler. Spooler, that's what I want to do. So now what I've done is I've created a variable called service, and the contents of that variable will be the word spooler. Now what that means is that right here, well, I can replace this parameter argument, the argument here, I don't have to type it. That can actually be service. So what I'm doing here, everybody, is I'm utilizing now whatever the contents of this service variable are, I want that to be reflected in the command line. Now that'll work. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to save this. Let's execute it again. And it worked. Now, that's a very, very simple scenario. You go, Troy, why on earth would we create a variable and then call the variable in the command line? Because we could have just put it in there. Well, what if we wanted to do something like this? What if I wanted it to be an option that I changed, like read host? Let's go, please enter the service you wish to restart. Okay, so now what I've done here is I've created an interaction here. I've created the script. The script now is going to use this line here, and it's going to ask me the question, what service do you want to restart? Now, whatever I type in is going to go right there. Now, if this were a real scenario, obviously I do have to make sure I'm typing in a valid service or I'll get an error, but watch the difference now. Let's just, let's close this out and clear this screen. Let's run it again. So now it's going to, oh, I got to save it. No problem. Please enter the service you wish to restart. Excellent. And oopsie, I got a C in there. I don't know why I did that. Let's do this one more time. Save that thing. It's down here. Close. Sorry about that. Let's run it. Excellent. The name of the service I want. Well, let's just say it happens to be the word spooler, and it will successfully restart spooler. But the point here, the point now, is that this can be anything I want. This can be anything that I need. And if I had a whole series of more complicated scenarios, well, I could actually use this in all sorts of different ways. Maybe I had a really long commandlet, like here. Let's start another one here. I'm going to start a new script here, and I'm going to do something that's really more complicated. Well, here's one of the more complicated ones we've been working with is new net IP address. Well, that has a whole host of commandlets to it, right? That's always going to be different. My interface alias is usually going to be different as well. My default gateway will always be different. My address family will often be different. So let's just say it's IPv4. My prefix length will always be different as well. Okay, so this is one of those commands where it's more complicated. Well, guess what I could do? I could create a variable here called, let's create a variable called IP address. And let's make that a read host question. Please enter the IPv4 address for the adapter. Perfect. Okay, now what that means is that the script will ask the user to enter the IP address that he or she wants, and if I put that right there, now what's going to happen is that as soon as this executes, there'll be a value that gets put right there. So now what I've been able to do is I could create a script that does a whole series of questions for me, and it quickly executes the commands that I may not remember how to do. The interface alias. Well, there could be multiple ones. Maybe it's just going to use Ethernet here because that's a very common one. But maybe I have a script that presents, let's do this, get net adapter, right? Okay, so here's a series of adapters on my particular thing. Well, maybe what I want to do is write a script that presents a list of the adapters on the particular computer and let the user choose which one he or she wants to apply that address to. I could totally do that as well. I could have the user create the, let's go, adapter. Okay, I could make that a choice. Read host, please enter the adapter name. Okay, excellent. I could also go, let's go default gateway. Okay, I'm going to go default gateway and make it nice and simple here. Read host, please enter the default gateway. Okay, excellent. Now notice I'm not putting a colon in there because there's a colon in there by default, but now I can replace Ethernet with the word adapter, default gateway with the DG variable, okay, and I can carry on with this. And so if I were to, I'm not going to run this because I don't, this is going to cause some problems here. Let's add a confirm here at the end, okay, and I know that I'm going to have a problem with prefix anyway, but if I were to save this script and call this, I don't know, set TCP IP settings. Okay, because that's exactly what I'm trying to do here. So there's a little script here that does a whole bunch of stuff at once. Let's do that. If I execute, here's my demo. I want to be 10, 10, 10, 1. Sure. What's the adapter name? Well, I would choose Ethernet. What's the default gateway? I would keep doing it, and then I could execute. So you see what I've done here, everybody, is I've added some versatility and some flexibility to this particular command, that particular script, to really make it my own. Now, it's another step to figure out how to control variables the moment I start doing this, because let's go back to this restart spooler. Well, how do I protect this script from someone typing in the service called purple, right? There's an error. There's no service called purple. So maybe there's something I need to do to enhance, to either provide more information to user-proof this particular script, or what I need to do is I need to come up with a way of handling errors with some constructive fashion, all of which is in the stuff to come. But your takeaways should look like this. Okay, so what we now are able to see is that you are now able to build a simple PowerShell variable. It's $ something followed by an equal sign, followed by whatever type of data we want. It could be a string, it could be an integer, it could be Boolean value, it could be all sorts of different things, but we can roll with some fairly simple stuff pretty easily. When we're using strings, though, there's a very different syntax associated with single quotes, double quotes, and escape characters. And we got a taste of the differences. Single quotes will return everything literally. Everything in there will not execute anything special. It will just see the $ or the number sign or the hashtag or something as a particular character. Double quotes will execute whatever it sees in there. So if I put double quotes and I put a $A in there, it's going to look and retrieve the contents of the variable called A. Escape characters let me work with those double quotes in different ways by either performing a specific action when there's a specific set of escape characters, like a backtick N, or ignoring the regular functionality of a particular character, such as that $, when it doesn't actually apply there. We now can use read host to have the user put in the content of a particular variable. And that becomes really useful because we now can build them into our scripts. Good practice is to build the variables at the top and have those variables fall into the commandlets at the bottom. We can also have read host involved where the user gets to type the contents of the variable and really make our script interactive. There's a lot more functionality now that we have with these scripts, and it's a going to be a really exciting time for you with your PowerShell. Hopefully that has helped. We're going to come back. We'll dive a bit deeper into some variables, and we're going to take a look at how we start playing with output of our scripts when we start actually building these things in a more complex fashion. All of that's to come. Hope that was helpful. You guys have a great day. We'll see you in the next video.